The mystery of Cleopatra's tomb has haunted scholars and dreamers alike for centuries, a ghost that drifts between legend and stone, rarely allowing firm footings. From the earliest classical texts, Plutarch, Suetonius, Cassius Dio, to more modern interpretations, historians have long speculated where the last queen of Egypt might lie. Plutarch, writing a century or more after her death, suggested that after their suicides, Mark Antony's body was placed in Cleopatra's arms, and that Octavian permitted their joint burial in a completed mausoleum. Yet he does not say exactly where this mausoleum stood, only that it was near an Isis temple, offering the first whisper of a religious tie between Cleopatra and the goddess. Over the centuries, those whispers echoed in many directions, that Alexandria, the royal city, must harbor her remains, that the shifting coastline, underwater ruins, and seismic upheavals have swallowed her tomb whole, that a temple outside Alexandria might conceal a royal crypt, that the Romans, in their zeal, destroyed or looted her resting place. Early explorers, archaeologists, and treasure hunters around Alexandria combed the sands and swept the bays, hoping to glimpse stone sarcophagi or inscribed mausoleums. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, with improving techniques of mapping and geology, people looked both inland and under the sea. Some favored submerged ruins beneath the modern city or beside the royal palaces. Others looked to mercurial promontories or shrines along the coast. Modern underwater archaeology, including the work of Frank Gaudio, revealed submerged quarters and palace fragments of Alexandria's ancient harbor, hinting that parts of Cleopatra's world have been lost to the waves. Such finds strengthened the theory that the queen's tomb might lie beneath sea, silt, and centuries of change. Yet no definitive grave, no intact coffin, no inscription boldly stating, "Here lies Cleopatra," was ever unearthed in those early phases. Meanwhile, theoretical and literary threads wove into the pursuit. Scholars pointed to Cleopatra's well-known identification with Isis, the Egyptian goddess of magic, motherhood, and resurrection. Coins and portraits sometimes cast her as an incarnate goddess. That association encouraged the idea that in death she might choose not a secular tomb, but a sacred temple, a sanctuary rather than a palace crypt. Some posited that she would have wanted her final resting place to echo her divine role, close to the worship of Isis. Others argued that Roman practice, architectural norms, or plain pragmatism would have constrained such ambition. Tension grew between tradition and symbolism, and every new excavation had to negotiate both geology and ideology. In the later 20th and early 21st centuries, excavations in and around Alexandria intensified, using remote sensing, geophysical prospection, sonar, and underwater mapping to discover city ruins lost to time. Archaeologists traced canals, submerged streets, foundation walls. Some brought up fragments of columns, statues, shrines, even partial facades of temples. Gradually, the weight of evidence suggested that large, significant structures had disappeared beneath Mediterranean waters near Alexandria. But convincing proof that a specific subterranean chamber was Cleopatra's tomb evaded the field. In parallel, on the land side, specialists identified temple sites outside Alexandria, looking for places that matched the pattern of the queen's affinities, her cult, and her political symbolism. Yet each candidate faced serious problems of dating, alignment, ownership, or absence of royal markers. It was against this tangled backdrop that Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a lawyer from the Dominican Republic turned archaeologist, entered the quest in 2005. She came equipped not with the weight of an Egyptology school, but with deep personal conviction and long hours poring over classical texts, geological maps, and comparative temple sites. She read Plutarch's hints about the Isis temple, plotted 20-plus candidate sites, and gradually narrowed her search to a single site that combined proximity, sacred resonance, and architectural possibility. The ruin known as Taposiris Magna, 25 miles west of Alexandria. Martinez believed that Alexandria itself, battered by earthquakes and subsidence, might be too compromised, too altered by centuries of urban growth, wave erosion, and sedimentation. A more stable site, dedicated to Isis and connected to the Ptolemaic religious world, might conceal the queen's tomb under more manageable soil. At Taposiris Magna, she and her mission began systematic excavation. She faced skepticism, limited funding, bureaucratic constraints, and the sheer difficulty of probing rituals and stones older than written memory. In early seasons, some trenches yielded little, but gradually the site revealed tantalizing clues. They found Greco-Roman burials, vaulted sarcophagi, shafts, tombs whose orientation suggested ritual priorities, and in some cases, mummies with gilded tongue coverings, an ancient custom thought to assist the deceased in speech in the afterlife. They unearthed coins bearing Cleopatra's image, statues and bust fragments, pottery, rituals, artifacts associated with Isis, and complex stratigraphy indicating use across the Ptolemaic and later eras. Martinez's team interpreted these as signals that Taposiris was more than a provincial shrine. It was a living temple, a cult center, a necropolis of status. Some tombs appear aligned to face the Isis temple structure itself, as if worship and burial were interwoven in ritual geometry. But obtaining direct proof of Cleopatra's tomb was still a distant dream. Critics pointed out that many of the finds could apply to nobles or priests, not the queen herself. Some argued that burial inside temples was rare or taboo in Egyptian tradition, or that the Romans would never permit such a sanctified resting place. Others proposed that Alexandria, rather than Taposiris, still remained the likelier location despite its complications. Yet Martinez persevered. Over the years, her team used radar, resistivity scans, magnetometry, ground-penetrating radar to detect voids, walls, anomalies. In 2022, they announced a tunnel stretching some 1,035 meters under the temple complex, heading toward the sea. That subterranean passage, they speculated, could have served to move remains or sacred goods, to bypass visible terrain or Roman surveillance. The possibility that Cleopatra's body could have been moved or concealed via a tunnel energized new hope. Then, more recently, Martinez's expedition uncovered what she calls foundation plates, or foundation deposits, at the corners of the Temple of Isis within Taposiris Magna. Ceremonial items placed in the ground when the building was established, often inscribed or dedicated to deities, intended to sanctify the structure. According to her publications and interviews, these foundation deposits carry text and symbolism explicitly linking the temple to Isis and entreating divine favor, identifying the precinct as consecrated to Isis. These plates, she contends, embody a spiritual claim that the temple complex is of Isis and thus suitably the resting place for someone intimately connected with that cult. Because Cleopatra aligned her identity with Isis in life, Martinez argues, the presence of these foundational markers strengthens the argument that this temple was chosen for her burial. That connection invites the possibility that if a tomb lies beneath or adjacent to the Isis temple, it might, by symbolic logic, belong to someone who presented herself as Isis incarnate. The discovery of the foundation plates also, importantly, suggests there was a tomb opening in that vicinity. Artworks, disturbed stonework, and subterranean chambers near the plates could correspond to a crypt placed by the temple's founding axis. In Martinez's interpretation, those opening facings and alignments point toward a hidden corridor or chamber waiting to be fully excavated. She contends that these inscriptions and the layout constitute more than mere coincidence. They reflect an intentional correlation between Isis worship and Cleopatra's funerary ambitions. If that alignment holds, then the tomb beneath or behind those foundation deposits may connect directly to Cleopatra. Martinez is cautious. She does not yet claim that she has discovered the sarcophagus of Cleopatra with incontrovertible proof, but she states that the tomb opening corresponds with the area sanctified by the foundation plates, and that those plates themselves tie the temple firmly to Isis, thereby providing a symbolic and structural link between the queen and the site. Thus, the journey from conjecture to possibility has traced many steps, from classical hints to underwater ruins, from temple shadows to geophysical anomalies, from noble tombs to gilded mummies, from tunnel hypotheses to foundational inscriptions. The search has not yet yielded the queen's remains, but it has uncovered a deep, layered narrative. Cleopatra as goddess queen, the cult of Isis as her spiritual mirror, and a temple site that, piece by piece, seems to reflect the form of a royal sanctuary rather than a mere mortuary outpost. Martinez's work stands now as one of the most focused and sustained efforts in modern times to realize the ancient dream of finding Cleopatra's tomb. The foundation plates and the tomb opening she proposes represent perhaps the most concrete clue yet. They suggest that the temple truly belongs to Isis, that its substructure holds more than ritual debris, and that by virtue of symbolic resonance the tomb might indeed be hers. Whether future excavation will prove that Cleopatra lies in that crypt or somewhere yet deeper remains to be seen. But the path of discovery, marked by courage and patience, now points more clearly than ever toward the possibility that Cleopatra's tomb may at last emerge from silence. Long before recorded history, there were advanced ancient civilizations capable of building gigantic megalithic structures we can't build today, lifting enormous stone blocks weighing thousands of tons and stacking them with laser-like precision. Blocks we still struggle to lift even with our modern cranes. They crafted mathematically precise, flawless monuments from the hardest stone on Earth, leaving us to wonder who these builders were and how they accomplished the impossible. Were they merely primitive societies, or were they masters of a forgotten technology lost to the sands of time? Uncover the evidence of an ancient, global, and technologically sophisticated civilization that once ruled over our planet, constructing gigantic sites the ruins of which are still standing, before a cataclysmic event erased it from memory. Access our eBook, Prehistoric Megastructures, a nearly 500-page volume packed with images and in-depth analysis of some of the most astonishing and unexplained ancient structures ever discovered, monuments that were clearly built with advanced technology from a time long forgotten. There's a limited discount on the eBook, so make sure to get yours before it's too late.